Hellboy is the latest adaptation of Mike Mignola's comic book series, this time directed by Neil Marshall, who's worked on Game of Thrones and made The Descent, a great claustrophobic horror film that a lot of people love. And this is a reboot, completely unrelated to the films made by Guillermo del Toro and Ron Perlman in the 2000s, where instead of getting a proper Hellboy 3 to conclude the old films, the decision was made to reboot Hellboy, with David Harbour now playing Hellboy instead of Ron Perlman. Now that decision proved to be very divisive. I was open to it as I've enjoyed Neil Marshall's work in the past. The Blackwater episode of Game of Thrones is one of the best on the show, and also the fact that the creator of Hellboy, Mike Mignola, was supposedly involved with this reboot, which was being envisioned as a gory, hard-R horror-themed take on Hellboy. Well, we now know that Mike Mignola didn't have as much involvement on the film as we initially thought, with a lot of his work being rewritten or thrown out, and that our director, Neil Marshall, didn't get treated very well by the producers of this film, where said producers would talk over Neil. Instead, the producers wanted the actors to do what they wanted and not what the director was asking. While in post-production, once Neil Marshall handed in his cut of the film, the producers supposedly took over and did their own thing with it. So in the end, we have a film that very much feels like it was made by committee. The movie has 8 listed producers credited, which should tell you a lot. There's a reason the reviews for this movie were embargoed till the day of release. It's not very good. Hellboy adapts 3 different Hellboy stories: Darkness Calls, The Wild Hunt, and The Storm and the Fury. Milla Jovovich's Blood Queen is set to rise again after being banished for centuries, and so Hellboy and his BPRD colleagues are sent to stop her from destroying the world. While this is happening, Hellboy is confronted with his origin and destiny as the Beast of the Apocalypse. In the hands of a different studio, I think this Hellboy movie could have been great. Millennium Films doesn't have the best reputation, known primarily for half-assed action films. There are some things that work in the movie, with the main thing being David Harbour as Hellboy. He does all that he can to try and make it all work. He has the ironic sense of humour that we know of Hellboy, while playing him with a bit more brash and angst than how we saw Ron Perlman play him. There's a lot of effort from David Harbour into playing the character, to really make him jump and come to life, giving this version of Hellboy a lot of energy, and honestly, given better material, David Harbour would have soared as Hellboy. The prosthetics used are great, making Hellboy look a lot more realistic than the old films, although you can tell at times that Harbour is having some trouble trying to react in some scenes with all the makeup on him. The film doesn't use as many prosthetics as it seems though. There's one other character where some great practical makeup is used to create the effect, but other monsters in the film are created using CG, where even some characters that had prosthetics on set have been replaced with CG in post-production. Very much like the 2011 version of The Thing. This would be fine if the CG was consistent throughout. Sometimes it's passable, but there is some shocking CG in parts. Even with the lower budget in mind, it just makes you wonder why promise this R-rated Hellboy with lots of gore if you can't deliver it convincingly. It's worse that the movie just doesn't have any natural flow to it. Most scenes are stitched together with pop songs, making it feel like a big music video at times, often doing away with the score by Benjamin Wolfish in favour of a needle drop. As a result, scenes just feel stitched together, and the movie just feels like a series of moments sewed together to resemble a film. Scenes lack any build-up. There's no mood setting, no atmosphere to give you an idea of what's going on. The movie will jump from a casual character building conversation to suddenly someone having a migraine, and it's very dramatic. But it's all confusing because nothing has been set up earlier about this character getting these powerful migraines. There's no cohesion to the scenes. The movie just jumps around from moment to moment without properly establishing things or making certain moments feel like there's any worthwhile payoff. This affects a lot of the comedy in the film as well, where for the most part, David Harbour is able to deliver some humorous lines along with Ian McShane and another character, but because of how the film has been edited, a lot of the jokes feel rushed through and a bit cringy, especially where a few meta jokes are used that are almost fourth wall breaking and feel completely out of place. A lot of the cast feel wasted too, because the film tries to introduce so many of them. You never really get to spend enough time with any of them to really care about them. Ian McShane is woefully underused, only appearing in a few scenes to deliver exposition and argue with Hellboy about his upbringing and destiny. Some characters disappear and then reappear towards the end of the film, where by that point you've completely forgotten about them. Alice Monaghan and Ben Daimio are Hellboy's colleagues who help him in this movie, and while there are a few fun moments with them, their backstories are very quickly told in flashback form, making them feel like more of a distraction than as a vital part of the film. Milla Jovovich does what she does best, so if you've enjoyed her work in the past, you'll know what to expect from her Blood Queen. The movie often doubles down on camp whenever the movie is focused on her, but again, these scenes with her however, get rushed through, as if the producers are embarrassed by the character and just want to get back to Hellboy. Of course, the violence and gore has been a big selling point of the film, and while it's fun to see one of these R-rated comic book movies finally try to push the violence, it often comes across as unnecessary, as Hellboy usually isn't present during these gory moments. The kills are grotesque, and admittedly you can have some fun with the over-the-top violence, but ultimately it just doesn't add much to the film. It's just CG monsters ripping CGI faces off, or a CGI demon ripping CGI people in half. It's fine if you're into it, the best kills are in the trailers, so don't go into the film expecting too much that you haven't seen already. The movie also stumbles into the King Arthur side of Hellboy's lore, which in 2019, after having quite a few recent movies reference King Arthur, makes this plot point feel generic, especially in how the movie chooses to rush through it all, when it could have easily been saved for a sequel and executed far better. Hellboy has things that work, mainly David Harbour and some of the comedy, but the movie has been put together by a committee of producers and executives, making it feel like a big mess, where scenes are all over the place and the movie jumps around while looking a bit cheap. The best way to describe this film is imagine if Del Toro tried to tell his Hellboy trilogy in one film, and you'll have an idea of why it's a mess. If they let Neil Marshall come back and release his cut of the film with the finished effects, then I'd be interested in seeing that. I want to see the version that he handed in, rather than rewatch the version that producers just stitched together. This is a movie that I've been really looking forward to. While the first trailer was a bit iffy, the posters and marketing have been pretty stellar, with some fantastic artwork released. I love the Hellboy character, the comics, and Del Toro's films. So that's why I'm a bit more harsh on this film than with other films I've reviewed. But even after seeing this, even with removing myself for the love that I have for the Del Toro films, all of it makes me wish I'd seen the movie that Mignola and Marshall pitched when this reboot was announced, because this isn't it. Honestly, I would trade Del Toro directed Hellboy 3 for this movie any day of the week, and I hope someone like Netflix seriously considers funding his Hellboy 3 after this. Look, you might find some enjoyment in this film. I'd strongly suggest waiting till it's on Blu-ray, or if you can get into a free screening like I did, then go for it, but otherwise hold off on it. Go back and watch the Del Toro films instead, if you want to see how great Hellboy can be handled in the right hands. Hellboy gets a 4.5 out of 10 from me. Guys, I hope you like this review. If you want to see more reviews just like this one, stay right here for your Mono Fix. Bye guys.